Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Maysoon can.
Thank you, my sweet. I think you were the only person. You were joining from. I'm just waiting also for Hala and the team to respond.
Okay.
Hi, Amin. Are we starting?
Yep. Yeah. We want to start. So first of all, thank you all for joining us today. We're really excited about the next steps and sharing with you also the process. I just want to make sure that before we start, we agree on certain things that are going to make things easier for us. So,
أمين
yes.
الصوت إحنا عندنا مش منيح اللي عبد الله هو هي التحكم فيه أفضل شيء كلها.
Sorry, Hannah? Can you hear me?
Yeah, the sound. Okay, we'll see. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
حاسة قديش تعبانة؟
Oh.
لو كان معي مجال أسوق على البيت.
So just one thing that I wanted to note is that when we got a chance to meet Her Royal Majesty Queen Rania, we shared with her some of the work that we're doing within the case study project specifically, and she was excited about that, and she asked about some of the dilemmas that we currently have within some of those cases. So she also voiced her interest in the project. The same thing goes with the Queen Rania Foundation CEO, Bassem Saad. He also mentioned the same thing and how they're pleased about this project. So we're really excited about this project and how it can help us help you disseminate the knowledge within Jordan, but also within the Middle East, and maybe replicate some similar projects within Jordan and within the region at large. So we're very excited about that. One thing that I just wanted to mention in terms of the logistics, please make sure that when case starts that you mute your mics, and you can do that basically by clicking on the mic icon. And if you have any questions, just basically re-click on the mic icon to talk and ask your question. But then after you finish your question, just click on it again so that you're muted. So that's one thing, just to make it easier for us as we're moving along, so that we have less noise, and we also give you a chance to listen to Kay, and also if you have any questions, do that. Okay?
Yes, sure. And I mean, kind of lost our video. So do you see us? I don't know.
Yes, I do. Yeah, I can see you.
Okay. So, okay. So no.
I think you closed your video right now.
No, now we are opening it so that we see the video. What is our video?
We can see you right now.
تحت؟
هي نفس وين صورة أمين على اليمين.
احنا هون. Okay. So we have like 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 out of 18. Some of our colleagues really apologize because they have field work, and some got sick. We have strange weather those days. So I'm not sure if any of them tried to connect separately. Did you?
No, we have Maysoon is connected.
I'm connected.
Okay. Great. I'm trying to get others in as well, but anyway, it's fine.
Okay, one thing that I want, sorry.
Yeah. Okay. So
you were saying you have. You were saying something, Hannah?
No, I'm fine. I'm just saying that we have 10 of our colleagues on Maysoon, so it's 11. So, and you probably see the audience here, yeah?
Yes,
you see
I do.
Here.
Yes, I can. Hey guys, all the attendees are QRTA coaches, or the mix between QRTA coaches and case writers?
No, we have mixed actually, because the learning is important for both. We need to understand more how to move with full case writing. Currently, we have kind of 8 cases drafted as additional cases. We'll send them probably by Sunday.
Okay, great. So yeah, I'll leave the details on when Kay joins as well. So yeah, just
Yeah, we'll
one thing I
send
also
that.
wanted to mention is that we're currently recording. We're going to record this session so that we can share it with you afterwards for your own use, and also if you want to share it with anyone else who wasn't able to join within QRTA or within the Ministry of Education. Okay?
Would be great if you
Great.
can record.
So yeah, I'll leave you now with. I mean, I'll be here, but I mean, Kay was going to leave the floor. Right.
Okay. Let's leave it open for now. Oh,
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. How are you?
good morning.
Good. So I have a series of slides that I would like to go through. And if you have a question, just unmute your microphone and ask the question and then mute it again. What I have put together here are some very detailed directions about case writing that I hope will help as we move forward. And I want to thank all of you who are attending and those of you who may watch this later. I think this is such an exciting opportunity, and I was so impressed with the outlines that came, and they came on time, and it's just going perfectly. So congratulations to all of you for your hard work. Congratulations to Amin for his hard work and coordination. And so let me go through this, and when we get to the end, we'll talk a little bit about deadlines and when we would like to begin to see the cases come back. So we're moving along beautifully. So thank you all. So if you now could all mute your microphones, I'm going to walk through these slides, which I hope will answer many of your questions. So the purpose, let me just remind us all, is that we want to work with teachers and teacher educators in Jordan to develop a set of cases on QRTA's problems of practice in both school leadership and teacher development. We think they will be very helpful to you, and indeed they will be helpful to us here at HGSE in our building of a case library. They will also be used to help you reflect a bit more on your practice and to think about what the challenges are that you're facing as you work with teachers in the region. So the goals of our seminar today are to offer details and directions for the next step of writing your first drafts, to offer a forum for questions and answers, and to basically have a dialogue when I finish, trying to answer as many questions as possible about how we move forward. So just to remind you, the cases that you're working on, and I could feel that they were really actual descriptions of real classroom situations. They were not made up. They're based on topics known to be challenging to learn. And while real, we want to be careful about using any identifying characteristics that could harm anyone there in the country. And I want to just pause and talk about that for a moment, because while I talk about things being real, it may be that in your particular case, what you describe is so specific that a knowledgeable person could say, oh, I know what school that is, and oh, I know what teacher they're talking about, and we want to avoid that. We want to protect the identity of the school, of the students, of the teachers, of the coaches. And so in that category, you may use what we call some liberal writing. You may make up, as I say, the cases themselves are not made up, but some of the details you may fuzz up a little bit so that it is harder for people to realize exactly which case and which person and which school you're talking about. I can't know that because only you as the authors know your particular situation. and Hala and others there, I will ask you to have a particular eye out to make sure that no one could be harmed by our writing about this particular situation. So the strongest cases are those that are built on dilemmas, which are situations where it's not clear what should happen. We want attention in the discussion, in the presentation, where on the one hand, the protagonist or the main character could do this. On the other hand, the character could do that. Both are equally compelling. We do that because it really enhances the discussion of the cases. And there are situations where reasonable people, where Amin and I could read the same case and we could disagree about what might happen. Or you and Hala might read the case and say, no, it should go this way. And then someone else says, no, it should go that way. There are situations where the reader is left with the need to make a decision. So the way we will format the case, and I will speak to that in a few slides, is to open with attention. What should Kay Merseth do in this situation? What should Amin do in this situation? And it presses the reader to be reading the case, thinking all along, like, what kind of action needs to be taken here? There is a tension, as I say, an agony. Should the character do X or should the character do Y? What really is happening here? It's a little bit like writing a mystery or a suspense novel, where you're putting the reader in the action seat to have to do something. So what should the protagonist or the main character do? We've talked about all of this before, but I just want to review that the characteristics of an effective case present enough material so that the reader can make an imaginative reconstruction of the world in which the case events took place. So you want to now provide, you didn't have time to do this in your outlines, but now you want to provide details that will allow the reader to put themselves in this situation. And you can use adjectives, you can use descriptions. And when I write a case, I often think of a particular classroom. I often, it's not the classroom that's in the case per se, particularly, but I have in mind a classroom that I can describe, and I find that easier to write that way. And the objective is to write about a puzzling story and to recreate it for your readers. So now you're all going to become mini novelists, mini authors. Well, you are authors and no longer mini, but now you want to be thinking more about the writing, because I think all of the dilemmas that we identified are good ones. And when you do this, one of the challenges is that you have a particular interpretation. You, the writer, have an opinion about really who was right and who was not right, or what the protagonist should do or what they shouldn't do. You have to be very, very careful to be balanced, to give just as much description and information about action, one particular action, as you do about the other one. And this is hard. And when I edit the cases, I will be looking for the balance so that you've described both sides of the dilemma adequately. So you, and this is hard, you must stay neutral in presenting the story. Now you're just putting the facts out for the individuals to read. You don't take one side or the other, and you must not prefer one view of the other. You are a storyteller that just brings this story into the case, into your writing, that we then can take and put into classrooms around the kingdom and around the region and here at HGSE. So now let's get started. And before you begin, you want to ask yourself, am I getting all the information? Am I only listening to 4 people here and I've not talked to another group over there? So the first question for yourself is, do you have a complete picture? You may want to go visit the school. You may want to talk more with the main characters in your case, like a newspaper reporter. You want to be able to get all of the information. And then, of course, are you keeping an open mind? Are you just getting the details, not making decisions? And finally, are you attending to chronology? And I bring this up because sometimes we want to tell everything right away. And I think a more powerful case is one that evolves through time and offers, and again, this may not be exactly how it happened, but offers an opportunity for the reader to first immerse him or herself in the context, and then to understand, well, first this happened, then that happened, then this happened, and thinking a little bit, again, as if you were telling a story to a friend about this situation, and keeping in mind what happened first, what happened second, what happened next. Now, in terms of writing the case, I personally like and would urge you to follow this format. The first part of the case is an introduction. It's like Susan was driving in her car on the way home from school, and she was thinking about what happened yesterday between teacher X and teacher Y. And just briefly, teacher X argued that this should happen, and teacher Y argued that that should happen. And you put this first because it helps the reader know essentially what the question will be, what the action forcing dilemma is in the case. And you can embellish it a little bit. You can say that Susan was driving home and she was at a stoplight and 4 people crossed in front of her. She was thinking about what happened in school and not paying attention that the stoplight changed, or, you know, some writing that makes it feel really real. I feel like I'm in the car with Susan, and she's struggling with this dilemma. She doesn't know what to do. And besides, she has to go pick up her child, and she has to cook dinner, and ... So you start presenting briefly the situation that is going to require the action, just very briefly, and you can embellish again with where the protagonist is, what they're doing, so forth and so on. So that's the part 1. Then in this part 1, you want to create a setting. You want to place it in a context that is vivid, use adjectives, that is believable, that, you know, most people say, oh, okay, I can picture that, interesting, and something that piques the reader's interest, almost suspenseful. You're almost writing a little mystery, and it's like, oh, I don't know what will happen next, but I'm, as a reader, quite interested in this topic, and I want to read more. So you give them just a little taste of what the issue is. Don't go into detail, just a little brief touch. Then, for your next part, you do, it's like a symphony, if any of you are orchestra lovers. You give a little bit, and now we're going to do an exposition. The background unfolds. I build in more detail, perhaps about the school, perhaps about the students, perhaps about the teachers, the context, whether it's in the rural part of the country, whether it's in the city. You offer more details. And you build, again, more information. It's like we start with this nub of a problem or a dilemma, and now we're going to surround it with some more information that will be important to the case, or maybe not. Maybe it's not important that there were 34 students in the class. Maybe it is. And that's okay. You can put in some information that may or may not be important, but you're making it believable and building in more information. Then we develop further details about the issues and about the challenges. So in part 3, we write more about the tension. We might write more and use dialogue, use quotations, even though you were not there. You can imagine what was said, and you provide more detail about the issue, about the parents felt this way, and the history of the way the school had run was this way, about what the challenges are, what the trade-offs might be, what the different points of view are. So in the development, you just give us some more information and build up the tension between the different ideas about what should happen. And then, as happens often in a symphony, the composer will come back to the original theme, will come back to the original tension. And what I like to do in many of my cases is to come back to the setting of Susan sitting at the stoplight, and you can almost repeat the introduction. It's like they're like bookends that you state, where Susan was, what she was thinking, what the issues were, or the family or whatever. And then they go through the development, you give more and more information, and then finally you recapitulate. You bring it back and put it in the lap, in the minds of the reader, in saying, what should this person do? And so between the introduction and the summary, we kind of bookend the case and provide, sort of leave it like, okay, now you, reader, need to start thinking about what should happen. So this is an outline of the way I very much like to have cases evolve. And I think probably the examples that we have used in the past with you might help you look at this idea. It's not absolutely ironclad, but I think it might help you develop and keep clear in your mind which part of the case am I working on. Am I working on the introduction and sort of setting the scene? Am I working on the exposition, providing more background information? Am I developing the tension? But she said this. No, he argued that. And we begin to now, our palms begin to get sweaty because we're thinking, oh my goodness, these people don't agree. And I'm going to need to make a decision. What should I do? So that is, I hope, a helpful outline for you about how to actually begin the writing of the cases. So when you think about the actors, about the human beings in the case, do not use real names. Again, we want to protect the identification of the individuals who you are writing about. So don't describe it in a way that would allow me or Amin or Hala or someone else to say, "Oh, I know who you're writing about," because that just, we do not have their written permission to write cases about them, and therefore we need to be careful. And as I say, in some instances, perhaps change, the way the characters look, change the way they interacted, but still keeping in mind that the particular dilemma. Now, when I write a case, I think of a person that is like the person in the case, and I actually think, well, he always wears a suit and a tie to teach. He stands tall. He looks across the room. He loves classical music. All of these things, and it helps me write more compellingly when I have in mind a particular person or a particular classroom or a particular place, that I'm now in the describing role, even though it's not the actual classroom in which this dilemma occurred, or the school situation. So when you think about the actors, about the protagonists, a very famous case writer here at Harvard talks about telling the reader about the itches and the ouches of your character. So make them real. He doesn't like spinach. He doesn't like to travel. He loves to travel. Whatever you decide to do, make them come alive, and make sure that this is a compelling story, that I, as the reader, identify with these actors in the case. And that comes from description. Now, we have to be careful when we offer descriptions that, again, we're just telling the facts. We're not coloring the facts with some bias. And I noticed in a few of the outlines that when I asked you to describe your characters, they came through in what I would say a biased way. Like when you describe a teacher, well, she was very authoritarian. She made the children feel uncomfortable. She spoke sharply to the parents. One way to be careful to make sure that you're being unbiased is to ask yourself, if that teacher read this description, would she agree with it, or would he agree with it? Well, if I'd said those things, like she spoke sharply to the children, the teacher might say, well, I'm not a mean person, but I'm firm. And so describing the teacher as being firm, as being directive, as opposed to speaking sharply, is the kind of nuance that I mean about using adjectives in a way that describe but don't bias. It's a matter of writing, and we will work. I will be editing, so, do your best. And I will, again, as I say, look at these, and if it feels like you're bending one way or another way, or saying things that really feel your personal point of view, I will comment. I will comment on that. So thinking about the actors is one area that you need to do some work about. I suggest writing from bulleted outlines, from outlines with bullets that are things that you want to say. It depends how you like to write. It's really up to you. Another area is thinking about the context of the case. So you want to describe a real situation, a real school, a real region, but don't offer the details that could identify exactly which school you're talking about. If sometimes, if necessary, when I'm writing a case, I change the number of students. I may change the gender of the students or the staff so long as it doesn't change the problem or the challenge. I may change the experience of a school director or the teacher or the number of children involved, so long as it does not change the dilemma. Once again, I find thinking of a particular situation of which you are familiar will make the writing much, much easier. You want to build interest for the reader. I find in my writing that using voice and dialogue is very powerful because people's, catchphrases, cadences, pauses, hesitations give important ideas about their way of thinking. So I urge you to use dialogue, to use quotations, even though we know you don't know exactly what was said, but you can imagine what was said. So, for example, Amin sighed and took a deep breath and said, well, pause, I really think this should happen. Well, just from what I said, you can get a sense that he's thoughtful, that he's reflecting, but he makes a statement. And in response, you could say, Kay quickly, forcefully said, I don't agree with that. I think your position is wrong because of this, this, and this. So in that little example that I just gave you, you begin to get a sense of what Amin is like, what I am like, what someone else is like, what a parent might be like, or a student, and it just makes things richer. It's like reading a little novel, and I want to know more. I want to know what happened. And so use dialogue, even if you don't know exactly what was said. Now, this idea of bias, and again, the best way to avoid bias, I think, would be to start by drafting two different interpretations of the situation separately. So use what we call sentence stems, which are starters, to get started. On the one hand, teacher felt this way about the situation, and write a paragraph or two describing how he felt, describing what he did, describing how his actions embody or symbolize what he thought, and give yourself a paragraph or so of this description. Put that aside, and then have a second paragraph or a couple of paragraphs. There's nothing about one paragraph. A second paragraph that says, on the other hand, the family felt that their children really should stay home, that they were more important to work with the family, to work with the livestock, to stay out of school, because the family saw no need for school. And, again, writing these two pieces separately will allow you to develop equally the tension between the 2 points of view. You can ask yourself, if this person that I'm thinking about read this description, would they think it's fair and accurate? So often we unintentionally add a biased phrase or a description, just like the example that I gave you before. So I would urge you to share your drafts with each other and ask your colleagues to read your draft and see if it presents an unbiased. You can say, does this feel balanced? Have I represented both sides in a balanced, equal way? And And I think, you know, with you reading it in Arabic, you will be able to kind of check for each other to make sure that what is presented is balanced and not biased. And so, finally, there are a few suggestions that I personally like in writing the cases. The first one is totally my preference, and you'll find cases written in other ways, but I prefer to have the cases written in the past tense, so that it's always, this already happened. I get confused when cases are written in the present tense, because then I have a problem with the chronology of what happened when, whatever. So my suggestion to you is to write in the past tense. Describe something that already happened. A second caution that I have for you is to try not to date the cases with events. By that I mean, if there were, Earth Day or some event that happens, I don't know what would, the election for us with President Trump, or, you have a new minister of education or something like that. I would not put that in, because then 5 years from now, the reader can read it and say, oh, that happened a long time ago, and I'm not really interested in that. So when you're doing your writing, if you put in current events, it dates the case, and I think will make it less useful over the years, because if this is a strong case, we can use it for years and years and years, as we want to. Another strong suggestion that I have for you, and I think you will find this in the cases that we have given you as an example, is to use subheadings. So you may begin the case with the description of sort of the action forcing event. That doesn't really need a subheading. But then after you've put that out, you might say another description. So you might insert a subheading which would say the school, or the community, or the teacher, or the students. Just subheadings help readers know where they are as they are reading. And as you can, insert a subheading, and if you don't, I will when I'm editing your work, because it just helps me as a reader sort of bookmark where I am. Okay, she's going to describe the school. Okay, she's going to describe the family. Okay, she's going to describe the community. All of those could be subheadings in your case. Any important data. So if there are test data that is important but not essential to the case, you can put in the appendix at the end of the case. So anything that is supportive of one position or another, you can put, and by this I mean data, so test scores, enrollment trends, community demographics. You can put in the appendix of the case if it doesn't feel like it should fit in the flow in the description. But I'd urge you probably not to put too much in an appendix. It's better if it's in the text itself, rather than asking the reader to look back and look forward and in many ways go back and forth. Another thing is the title. And the title can be general and not specific to the characters or the context. Now, in some of the cases that I know I worked with you, one of them I'm thinking of was Success for All or for some. Or another title was It Ain't Fair, or what would happen tomorrow. These titles are helpful in that they can indicate to us a little bit about what the case is about, but they're not, again, specific, and they don't necessarily describe really in detail what happens in the case. So they can be general, not specific to the characters or the context. It's not a very big deal, but giving a little thought to the title can be helpful. And again, if I feel like your title doesn't really give us a good sense of the case without giving it away, I may edit that some. And then finally, once you have finished your first draft, once you've got it all together, and not before, I'd like you to write a brief one-paragraph synopsis or a brief description of the case that we will probably use in a catalog or in the book in the front matter that says the case written by Amin, that's title is To Be or Not to Be. And here's the description. As a reader of our book, they can look through and say, oh, I'm really interested in that issue. So we'll use a brief one-paragraph description of your case that we would include in the index or in the contents of the front matter of the case. And I suggest you write that rather than I, and that you write it after you've finished your draft, and just, essentially play with the idea. Someone wants to know what this case is about. And so what you put in this synopsis or in this description is what we would use, again, to telegraph or to tell the reader of our book what's included. So those are all of my quite specific, I hope, helpful suggestions to you about writing the case. And now what I'd like to do is spend the next time that we have together answering your questions, if you have some. And again, I think we can, if you have them, I see your large group with Hala, we can see you. You can unmute your microphone if there are questions. And Maysoon, I know that you are there as well. You can unmute. Or there is a chat window.
Yeah.
Is there not? Amin's going to give me your chat window so that I can see. You can type in your question. But please hold forth and tell me, what questions do you have? If any. And we should, right?
Ken, I'm not sure why we lost you.
You can't see me?
Yes.
Is that better?
You would make a question? How would we know?
I'm there, and I can use my mic.
Yes.
Like, if you allow me, one question that was in my mind is about the order or the structure that you suggested, Kay. Do you think, do you recommend that all cases will follow the same organization in terms of starting with the exposition and then moving to the other parts?
It does not. It's not required. It was only a suggestion. that I think will help some writers. But if you have another structure in mind or another way to tell your story, that is fine. I think we can have a mixture of cases that follow that kind of, here's the problem, here's the development, here's the exposition, here's the recreation of the problem. It's not required, it's only a suggestion. So don't feel like you must follow mine.
Thank you.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
I'm Salam. I was wondering if you can elaborate or tell me more about the need to integrate or merge two cases. How do I do that in a best way to still reflect it as a case with a dilemma? Because I had a recommendation to merge it or integrate it with another case. Could you please tell me more about that?
Yes. So thank you. Thank you for asking that question. As I read the case outlines, I felt that your case remind me what your case is about again. Can you tell me what your case is about? Because I've forgotten the details.
Yeah, it is learning disabilities. Special needs. You both have similar case. Yeah.
So I felt like the two cases were similar, but they could be worked either into one case where the two of you could work together and develop the case, which would be a fairly complicated case with bringing both of your issues and your perspectives together, or they could be developed into two separate cases. But what I wanted was, if you do two separate cases, I don't want them to be about exactly the same issue. So I don't know if that's difficult for you. I have no idea whether you are in the same building or geographically close. If it's hard for you to work with this other person, that was a suggestion. Tell me, do you know the other person that I suggest you consult?
So, okay, both coaches, not case writer, are from QRTA, so we can sit together and review the percentage of similarity in both cases, or it can be developed further into a separate cases or to merge, if that's the starting point for our new task.
That would
are in QRTA, but teachers are not from the same.
Right.
So we have a teacher and a school principal.
Okay. Well, in the case that I suggested that you work together, if it's too difficult, then don't. I just didn't know who the two different people were, but I felt like, as I recall now, in the special needs, that the cases could take slightly different approaches, and I just wanted to avoid having two cases that are about exactly the same thing. Does that make sense to you?
I think we'll start by reading together the cases and see what similarities and how we can develop further each case and by itself or to merge them. So I think we need first of all to sit together and read them, and then we'll brief you more. And then if we cannot really make them too different, because those are cases written by teachers and principals, so they might not be able really to make it that much varied. So probably then we have to choose the best one and leave it. The other one, we can skip the other one. I don't know. So we'll leave it to the Salam and Iman are the coaches of cases. So maybe they can go back. Either they can see how to make it them different, or just suggest to keep one, which one to keep and which one. Because I think for the two educators, the two MOE educators to work together, that will be very difficult.
Okay.
Not in the same building, not even in the same city. No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What, use your best judgment.
Okay. Okay.
Are there other questions?
Maybe cases, Kay, you just replied to the maybe cases. So for the ministry ones, they are, you mentioned, Kay, that they are similar to the ones we already selected, so we are not taking the ministry maybe. For QRTA, maybe there is one with Noor. She's not here, Noor. But Noor and Dima, I will talk with them so that they can make them really different cases because they kind of similar.
Perfect.
So that's the maybe cases. So no exception for maybe. So other questions?
I have a question, Kay. You mentioned in the case tracking conventions that important data can be included in the appendix of the case. So it wasn't very clear to me because we know that we want to protect the identity of the school and persons there. So what kind of data could you actually attach or include?
Excellent question. So in a case like that, I would look at the actual data for the school, and then I would change it a little bit in order so that we can protect the identity of the school. That's why, it probably, I would urge you probably not to put that kind of data in an appendix where someone can match it to results that are publicly available. Again, if you're trying to show that the 4th grade scores went up a certain amount, you can make your own data table. That's a super wonderful question, and I don't want to urge you to, again, worry too much about putting exactly what the right data are, but rather the data that would represent a change. So let's say the 4th grade scores on average went from a 14 to a 22. Well, if you really think that's important for the case, then in the table that I would put in the appendix, I would show that the scores went from a 15 to a 28, something that's just a little different, so that again, I don't think this will be an issue, but sometimes people want to figure out, they want to know, and they want to. The other thing that often happens when I'm teaching a case where I've left with this tension, with this dilemma, people come up to me after and they say, well, what really happened? And they want to know the rest of the story. And again, if I'm teaching the case and I wrote the case and I know what happened and I think it's appropriate, I will describe what really happened in the end. But you do not want to put that in your case. You're creating a dilemma, and you don't tell the rest of the story. You don't say, in the end, Susan decided to do this. Don't put that in the case. That's what you want the reader to come up with. But your question about the data is a good one. And I think probably in general, I would just say don't put data in the appendix, but keep it in the flow of the story itself. Does that help?
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much.
That's an excellent question. Other questions?
Other questions? Okay, I have a question because we had some discussion around how far you can go to disguise the characters, really. So we can go that far that changing it from boys to girls, if it does not affect the discussion or from one grade to another or area. Or so, yeah, so it is just for the team to know, so how far we can push the writers to change the context so that it cannot be identified. Like, for example, we had a discussion around that gender case, which was accepted because the way it was put, it can clearly identify one of two schools in Jordan. So they need to change it more so that it can be more about gender issues, but not get to school.
Again, an excellent question. I think you really are grasping the nuance of case writing. So in the instance of a gender case, you don't want to change the gender because that's part of the case. So here is a suggestion. You could describe a school not in Jordan. You could describe a school in Lebanon or Egypt or some other place, and you could say that in the case, you know, in this small town outside of Cairo, this happened. That's enough to put off anyone who's going to try to identify the case as a case in Jordan. So does that help a little bit?
Yeah. So
you really have to decide what's essential and what should be true, and then, as I say, put it again. If its location in a rural area is important, which many of your cases did have that as an issue, don't change that. But again, put it in a different part, a different region of the country. Put it in a different country. Again, in a case where I don't know whether in a case where it's located in a rural area, whether changing, again, the gender of the teacher matters or not, it may. These are the things that, Hala, you and your team will have to decide.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Let me ask, does this kind of detail help you?
Yeah. Yes, it's very useful. Very useful, yeah. Good.
Well, we have recorded this session, which Amin will figure out how to get to you, and you can share with the individuals who were not able to make it today. We are thinking that we would like for you to work on your cases and to send them to us by April 26th, which will give you just about a month, about 4 weeks, to work on your drafts. And this, again, they will come back to me, and I will edit them probably lightly at this point and send them back to you for your consideration. And if we try to honor that deadline of April, the end of April, that will keep us on task to be able to publish this when we want to. So I don't know if that's too difficult for you, but to give you about a month, and Hala, for you to work with your team to try to get cases back to us by the end of April. Does that seem reasonable?
Yes, end of April, sorry.
Yeah, that seems fine. For the additional cases,
yes.
We kind of have like 8 offers, but we were thinking for some of them before moving into translating the full outline, because we would like to send you just the idea, the description of some cases, and then just let us know which ones of those we need to pursue, because there are 3 about bullying. So whether we are taking, because those about bullying are really for some of QRTA team who were not part of the training. We're just trying to give them an idea about how they want to do it. So
I think that's fine, Hala, if you just send me the idea.
Yeah.
And that would be fine. I don't, again, let's not try to do 4 pages of the outline that everyone else did. but send me enough information so that I can tell what the case will be about and what the discussion would be about, what the tension is. And the sooner you do that, the better I can get right back to you and say, yes, this one looks really promising. No, this one doesn't look like it will work. So just send me the ideas.
Great. We'll do that. We'll do that by Sunday. Monday. Yes. So that we can decide on those cases. For the video, okay, Amin will send us the video of this session.
Yes,
so hope
will.
you can write that copyright or something, because if we are sharing it with the field, we want it really to be protected against using it publicly. So you don't mind sharing it with the teachers and educators?
I don't. No. It's just me, just little old me.
No, you are. Yeah. So it's fine. So,
all right. Well, I think our time is about up. So
yeah.
Again, use email to correspond. I feel like we have a wonderful back and forth. And to reiterate what Amin said, we are so excited about this, and I'm particularly excited that QRTA is being so positively represented there in the kingdom. I really congratulate all of you for your hard professional work. I think it's very important. I think it's wonderful that the Queen is interested. And perhaps when we launch the book, we will have some event at which she can attend and help us publicize the materials. So you're doing a great job, really a wonderful job. And thanks to Amin and to all of you for making this happen. I'm very proud of you.
Thank you, Karen. We are really
Bye.
very proud of our partnership. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.